Welcome everybody to an all new episode of BS. Hope you guys are having a great day as always. Yes, I know I look different, quite frankly, I don't care. So you're just gonna have to get used to it. Also, you guys know the deal. My camera's not working properly. Hopefully I can get that fixed very soon or get new equipment or something. All that should be coming very soon. So I found out Madden 21 comes out on the 28th. The day when I'm filming this is the 26th. So I'm going to have to put out a bunch of episodes in a row, rapid fire style, until I get to episode 20, because I want to get to episode 20 before I do my Madden 21 video. So that's what my goal is right now, and I am planning on playing Madden 21. I am excited about that. Hopefully it's good. I'm going to just be doing a quick review of Madden 21. Maybe I'll play it again, maybe I won't, depends how many views it gets and whatever. So that's the goal right now. Hopefully I don't have to keep using my computer camera. It's only gonna be like this for just a little bit longer, and then I'll have my setup like I usually do. Hopefully you guys can understand the predicament and the issues. So that's about it. Let's get into the first topic of today. All right. So you guys all know I'm a really big fan of Trace McSorley. If you don't know who he is, he's currently the third string quarterback of the Baltimore Ravens. He's number 7. That's his jersey number. And I'm a humongous fan of Trace McSorley, and I feel so bad for him. Listen, he is great. Okay? He is the best thrower of all the quarterbacks on the Ravens roster. I said in the past, he is better than Lamar Jackson at throwing the football, not running. They're two different things. Trace McSorley, he has a better deep ball. I do have to say he doesn't have as strong of an arm as Lamar Jackson. Trace McSorley has a little bit of a weaker arm than Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson surprisingly has a really good arm. He just needs to work on his accuracy and where he's throwing the ball. I mean, seriously, but Trace McSorley, he has a great deep ball. One of the most underrated deep balls in the NFL. And he was pretty good, solid as a rookie. Like, I saw him at practice. I didn't see him personally, but I saw videos of him at practice. And even right now during training camp, he's doing pretty good. And, I need to have him be a starting caliber quarterback, franchise quarterback somewhere in the NFL, because he's just way too talented as a quarterback to be switch to a wide receiver or a kick returner or punt returning. He's way too talented. All right, especially as a quarterback. He has everything you want in a quarterback, basically. He has really good accuracy. I don't even understand why no one has even wanted to trade for him yet. I was kind of shocked that the Ravens, out of all teams, picked him. Seriously, he is meant to be a starting caliber quarterback. Now, I know they have Tyler Huntley on the Ravens roster right now, and he's another one. I talked about in a past video where I said all 4 quarterbacks on the Ravens rosters are meant to be starting quarterbacks. It's insane. They have like the best quarterback depth in the whole NFL. It's insane. But this is what I think Trace McSorley should do. I believe Trace McSorley should join the XFL. He should join the XFL. Now, let me tell you why. If you have heard, PJ Walker was the MVP of the XFL. And right now, after the XFL ended, or got cut short due to coronavirus, after the XFL got cut short, he signed with the Carolina Panthers. And let me tell you, I believe PJ Walker is the future of the Carolina Panthers franchise. Now, I love Teddy Bridgewater, and I feel so bad that he's not going to be able to be the franchise quarterback because, well, that's actually a topic for another time, but PJ Walker is most likely going to be the franchise quarterback for the Carolina Panthers. It's written all over the wall. They got Keith Kirkwood, a former wide receiver for PJ Walker when PJ Walker was at Temple. They brought Keith Kirkwood onto the roster. Matt Rule used to work with PJ Walker. He said in multiple interviews he's a big fan of PJ Walker, and I don't even know why they're saying there's a backup quarterback competition in Carolina. It's obvious that PJ Walker will be the second string quarterback, and Will Grier should be cut. Will Grier should be cut. He's worse than his quarterback mechanics were worse than Tim Tebow. He doesn't have a good arm. I don't even know why he was drafted in the 3rd round. I just don't understand what was their thinking with Will Grier. He's worse than Dwayne Haskins. All right, I'm not a fan of Dwayne Haskins, but yeah. So Trace McSorley should do the PJ Walker route. If Trace McSorley joins the XFL, plays for a whole year, I'm telling you, Trace McSorley will win XFL MVP. And then, eventually, hopefully, Trace McSorley could be signed to an NFL roster and be the franchise quarterback to an NFL franchise. Because Trace McSorley is an NFL caliber quarterback. I feel like he's better than a lot of the starting quarterbacks right now. He is way, way better than Mitchell Trubisky. I would say he's even better than Tyrod Taylor. I'm a big fan of Tyrod Taylor, but I'm just saying Trace McSorley isn't really, really good passer, and he's going to get even better going into next year. In his training camp, he's been having a really great training camp right now. Magnificent. I always liked Trace McSorley coming out of Penn State. I've been a really big fan of him. I've been a really big fan of PJ Walker too. I mean, I'm a Temple and Penn State fan, and those are the 2 teams I always root for. And I've been a big fan of PJ Walker, and I'm so glad he's having the chance to start in the NFL because of the XFL. And that's why I like the XFL so much. That's why, because they have a bunch of underrated players, and it's just incredible. Also, Cam Phillips, he's in talks into joining the Carolina Panthers. It's not 100% confirmed yet, but it looks like that he's in talks into signing with the Carolina Panthers, which is more proof that PJ Walker is the future of the Carolina Panthers franchise. Okay, so back to Trace McSorley. I feel like he could be the Houston Roughnecks future franchise, whatever. I mean, I could see him joining the Houston Roughnecks and play even better than PJ Walker did, because Trace McSorley is better than PJ Walker, and I believe both of them are really 2 great quarterbacks. But PJ Walker has some issues. I'm not going to deny that, but his issues are easily coachable, and that's why I think him going to the Panthers is the perfect choice. I feel like eventually he can be better than Teddy Bridgewater, and I think that's the goal. Teddy Bridgewater's going to stay there for 3 years, and then they're going to move to PJ Walker as the franchise quarterback. I'm sorry I'm talking about the Panthers. I'm a big fan of what's going on with PJ Walker, but I'm talking about Trace McSorley. I'm going to stick with him this time. All right. I'm not going to whatever. Yeah, I was saying I want Trace McSorley to join the XFL. I think he should join the Houston Roughnecks now that they don't have PJ Walker anymore. And I think he could win XFL MVP and eventually join an NFL team to be the future franchise quarterback. Like, I just don't understand how he got sent back all the way to the 6th round. You know, he's better than a lot of the backup quarterbacks right now. He's better than RG3. He is better than RG3, but RG3 should be the backup to Lamar Jackson as a mentorship type of role. You know what I'm saying? So, all in all, I think Trace McSorley should do the PJ Walker route. Join the XFL. Join the XFL, man. If you do the PJ Walker route, go on the XFL for a year, and then join the NFL as possibly a future franchise quarterback, I could see you doing that. I could see you winning the XFL MVP. NFL teams will be interested because they don't look. If I'm being honest, I just don't understand how NFL teams don't look at tape. It's like a lot of the NFL teams out there, they don't even look at the tape. They just look at speed and college highlights. That's what it seems like all they look at when they go to draft a player. It's weird because I just don't understand how. Oh, sorry about that. I just don't understand how Trace McSorley hasn't been picked up, hasn't been considered to be a future franchise quarterback for an NFL team. It's so weird with how some of these underrated players go way, way deep into the draft and don't even get picked up. You know what I'm saying? It's just so weird sometimes. Yeah. So all in all, I think Trace McSorley should join the XFL, do the PJ Walker route. That's all. That's all I gotta say about Trace McSorley. I'm a big fan of his, and hopefully he'll have a future in the NFL somewhere. I think he should be the future franchise quarterback of the Bears. That's honestly what I see. I see Nick Foles being the quarterback for at least 3 or 4 years, and maybe they can get Trace McSorley onto their team and then transition into Trace McSorley over time. That's honestly what I see, and I'm all down for that. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, all in all, I've said it like 4 times. All in all now. All right, we're moving on. All right. Also, keep in mind that I wrote this episode, like I said last episode. Keep in mind I wrote this episode a long time ago. This is an older topic. I have a couple older topics and news out on this list, so just keep that in mind if some of these are outdated. And if they are, I'll just improvise and make it a different topic. Just keep that in mind. All right, moving on to topic number 2. Mason Rudolph. If you don't know who Mason Rudolph is, he's currently the second string quarterback to the Pittsburgh Steelers. He started some games last year. He ended up throwing for 13 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. And main question is, would the Steelers be better off starting Mason Rudolph over Ben Roethlisberger? Honestly, yes. If you keep in mind that Mason Rudolph started 1 year, and he had a ton of drama, like a lot of drama. He also had a concussion, which, me personally, I find concussions one of the most serious injuries in the NFL. They can ruin your attitude or your NFL season. You know what I'm saying? So I just want you to keep that in mind when I say I think Mason Rudolph should start over Ben Roethlisberger. And also, I could see him being the future starting quarterback, franchise quarterback of the Steelers. I'm still not 100% sold on Mason Rudolph. I really was when they first drafted him. But over time, I mean, I'm looking at his training camp. He's just all right. You know what I'm saying? But he had some incredible throws last year. So he's obviously a really, really good backup quarterback. He's better than Devin Hodges, the third-string quarterback on the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think they would be better off because Mason Rudolph has a stronger arm currently because Ben Roethlisberger, who knows how his arm is after he tore that ligament on his arm. And Mason Rudolph has a pretty solid arm. He's really good under pressure. Like, not like critical situations, like when he has people coming at him, he's pretty good at throwing the ball under pressure like that. And he threw the ball. He had some really accurate passes under pressure before his concussion, because when he got his concussion, that's when things started to get messed up for him. That's when, after, I think, a couple games after his concussion coming back, he threw 1 touchdown, 4 picks. Now, I still blame that on his concussion. So if he doesn't get any injuries or concussions like he did last year, I think he'll be pretty solid. So quite honestly, I think Mason Rudolph is the better option for the Pittsburgh Steelers over Ben Roethlisberger. Ben Roethlisberger has been costing his team way too often. He throws a ton of picks, unnecessary picks. He's not clutch. He hasn't been good since at least 2016. I'm saying good, not amazing, good. He hasn't been good since 2016. He was okay in 2017. I feel like everyone around him lifted him up, but he dragged the team down a lot in 2017, and I find him pretty bad in 2018. He forced way too many passes to Juju Smith-Schuster when he had Antonio Brown wide open. 2018 Steelers were a bunch of drama. In 2019, quite honestly, they had a lot of drama too. They need to change their atmosphere down in Pittsburgh because they're having drama after drama after drama. You know what I'm saying? Myles Garrett's situation happened last year. There was like some controversy with Juju Smith-Schuster if he was meant to be future starting wide receiver, take the place of Antonio Brown. And honestly, yes, he's a starting wide receiver. Well, I don't know why trading Juju Smith-Schuster was even a thought in anyone's minds. That's just insane. It's crazy how much people give up on other players after one season. 2019, they didn't have Ben Roethlisberger. I feel like they would have done better without Ben Roethlisberger, because he played pretty awful before his injury. Like, he threw no touchdowns, one pick. It was a really bad pick. And Mason Rudolph already has chemistry with a couple of the players already. You know, he threw deep ball after deep ball to Deontay Johnson, I believe his name is. He threw deep ball after deep ball to Deontay Johnson, and they seemed like they had pretty good chemistry. James Washington, another great wide receiver for the Steelers. Mason Rudolph and him had great chemistry, but it didn't seem like it was fitting well with Juju Smith-Schuster, even though they seemed like they were great buds off the field. Because if you remember when Mason Rudolph got really knocked out pretty bad, Juju Smith-Schuster was like basically crying if you look back at Mason Rudolph's head injury last year. I think they're better off. I think Mason Rudolph will take that step forward going into next year. And I feel like they should start Mason Rudolph, that they kind of believe that he could be the future starting franchise quarterback of the franchise. So, yeah, I mean, that's just what I think that's what they should do. I think it's the best for the organization. Question is he a future franchise quarterback of the Steelers? I'm still not 100% sold. I'm still leaning half and half, you know. I when he first got drafted, I was big time like this guy is the future starting franchise quarterback of the Steelers. But now, after last year, and it seems like he has injury problems, and he's already into a bunch of drama with Myles Garrett, unnecessary drama. I'm not 100% sold. I need him to start one more year. If he does pretty good next year, then I would believe in Mason Rudolph. And I gotta say, he's a lot better than Blake Bortles, because people were comparing Mason Rudolph to Blake Bortles. Blake Bortles threw 13 touchdowns to 10 interceptions on the least talented roster, and Mason Rudolph threw 13 touchdowns and 9 interceptions with better completion. And you also got to look at the offensive line and wide receiver core. But Mason Rudolph had a lot of pressure for some reason when he was in the pocket. So, yeah, he was better at throwing the ball inside the pocket. I don't know what I'm getting at now. I'm just saying he's better than Blake Bortles. And I think they would be better off starting Mason Rudolph over Ben Roethlisberger due to the fact that Ben Roethlisberger is no longer good, and Mason Rudolph, if they believe in him, they should start him at least another year and see how he does. See how he does throughout the whole year. And if he starts throwing 4 interceptions again, like 1 touchdown, 4 interceptions, then bench him for Ben Roethlisberger, even though I don't think Ben Roethlisberger has it anymore. He forces balls all over the place. He's no longer clutch. He costs his team in critical situations. He throws pick sixes like it's nothing. He'll throw a ton of yards, and because he always relied on his arm, but who knows how his arm's going to be now. I've looked at his recovery videos, him throwing the ball. He doesn't look like he has it. It looks like his arm is a lot weaker than it usually is. So I don't think he has it anymore, and I think they're better off with Mason Rudolph because of that. And I think before Ben Roethlisberger's injury, Ben Roethlisberger wasn't that great. So I think they would be better off with Mason Rudolph, and I think they should have a test run to see if he's the future of their franchise, because they're not. It seems like they're kind of like yes and no about that too. They kind of have the same feeling that I do. I just think there might be better options than Mason Rudolph. Like, I think he's a solid quarterback, and he's definitely a really good backup quarterback, but I just don't know if he's a franchise quarterback yet. I'm still half and half on that. So we'll find out if hopefully they would start him. I think they should start him. Quite honestly, I think he was a little bit better than Ben Roethlisberger in some cases. I don't think he'll cost the team as much. And he was pretty good before his head injury. So we'll see. We'll see. And also, he seems like he's a little bit injury prone. But all in all, I think they should start Mason Rudolph over Ben Roethlisberger. All right, moving on to topic number 3. All right, there's been a debate out there that the Buccaneers are overrated. And I'm part of that. I agree with that statement. I'm one of those people that have been saying the Buccaneers are overrated. They have way too many issues. They're just looking at the superstar players that are on their team, and there are a lot of them, but they do have some glaring issues, and most notably is the offensive line. Don't people understand that they don't have a great offensive line? Why do you think Jameis Winston threw 30 picks? I think it was like 33 touchdowns and 30 picks. Yeah. Why do you think he threw that many picks? First off, 50% wasn't his fault, and 50% was the offensive line's fault. Now, Jameis Winston threw the ball like he threw way behind, inaccurate, enough. He didn't have enough oomph on the throw. He didn't have enough. He didn't use all of his effort a lot of the time on the throw, and then it would be picked off. And he would stare down his receivers like it's nothing. So Tom Brady wouldn't be having that problem going into next year. But Tom Brady is going to have a problem with pressure in his face. Jameis Winston had a lot of pressure in his face. And I don't think people understand that. They really, like, imagine Tom Brady with Cam Jordan in his face 24/7. You know what I mean? Tom Brady's not going to like that. Now, he is going to throw the ball away. Unlike what Jameis Winston did, he would force the ball down the field. Tom Brady will be throwing the ball away. Because Tom Brady has a clever trick of intentional grounding, but not actually getting the penalty. If you look at his film, he'll throw it like right underneath the receiver's legs. Any of his receivers or running backs. That's how Tom Brady will not get called on intentional grounding, even though he is doing intentional grounding. Tom Brady's a clever one, but not that clever. It's weird that other quarterbacks haven't been doing that, haven't been copying Tom Brady's what he's been doing, like to throw the ball away. Like it's kind of cool that he throws it like right underneath the receiver's legs or right near the receiver's direction and not get called on intentional grounding. Tom Brady's probably going to be doing that throw, the intentional grounding, a lot. Like the throw where he throws near the receiver's area and not be called on intentional grounding. So he's basically throwing the ball away, throwing it down into the ground, but he throws it near the receiver's area so it's not called intentional grounding. You know what I'm saying? So Tom Brady has that clever trick, and I'm sure he's going to be using that trick a lot due to the bad offensive line of the Buccaneers. Like it's not that great. And Tom Brady has had a great offensive line throughout his whole career, basically throughout his whole career. And I can't imagine him throwing amazing passes under pressure. Like Patrick Mahomes' offensive line isn't that great, and he's really good under pressure. Like when the pocket's filled and a bunch of defensive players are in his face, Patrick Mahomes knows how to throw a great throw. You know, Tom Brady's used to a clean pocket, and even though the offense might adapt to what Tom Brady does best, it's still not gonna. The offensive line is still gonna have issues because what Tom Brady's offensive scheme down in New England was always to have a good offensive line. In 2019, he didn't have an amazing offensive line as he usually did, but it was still top 10. It was still at least top 10, the Patriots' offensive line last year. And he ended up having to throw the ball away because he was scared of getting hit. He's not that great under pressure. And I just don't know how he's going to do going into next year. I'm sure he's going to not throw a ton of turnovers. I think it's going to be like 30 touchdowns, possibly, I don't know, like 30 touchdowns, 16 interceptions. Not going to be even close to Jameis Winston's turnovers, but he's probably going to have a high number of turnovers, and he's going to end up throwing the ball away, which lowers his completion. You know what I'm saying? So we'll see. I just think I'm still in the category of they're overrated. I think I called that the Browns were overrated when everyone was hyping them up. When everyone was hyping up the Browns, I could tell that they were overrated right away. Too much locker room hype. Every team that gets hyped up almost every year basically ends up not going to the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? I can't remember a team that was super hyped up that ended up going and winning the Super Bowl. Yeah, I mean, like, number one hyped up team, the team that's been talked about throughout the whole summer, and that's basically been the Buccaneers. It was the Browns last year, and in 2018, I believe it was the Eagles, but they still ended up going to the playoffs. So usually hyped up teams don't end up going to the Super Bowl. That's just unfortunately how it is. Because the pressure is like always in their head, and something will always go wrong, you know. And right now the hyped up team is the Buccaneers, and I think they're really overrated. People are missing their bigger flaws. Now they did upgrade the running back position, so I thought that was like a major flaw before, but now that they have LaShawn McCoy, they finally have a good running back in the locker room. I think they're pretty solid on that part, but they still have a bad offensive line. Their defense still has some weak points. We'll see if Shaquille Barrett can elite as he was last year, because Shaquille Barrett led the NFL in sacks. So we'll see if he can do that again. I'm not sure if he's a one-hit wonder or not. We'll see going into next year if he's a solid top 5 defensive lineman in the NFL. I'm still not sure. I need to see like at least another year before I call him a one-hit wonder. All right. So they still have a lot of issues, and I think they are overrated. And their offensive line is a really big, glaring weak spot in the Buccaneers team, and it seems like people aren't addressing that weak spot. But I am, because I feel like they're overrated. So all in all, people need to realize that the Buccaneers have a really bad weak spot, and which is their offensive line, and that might affect their season. And I feel like they might be going 9-7, 8-8, not having as great of a season as people are saying they're going to have. They're overrated, and their weak spot is their offensive line. All right, moving on to the news. News number 1. Joey Bosa signs a 5-year deal with the Los Angeles Chargers. He extended his contract. Now, this is a great move by the Los Angeles Chargers. This is really going to help them in the long run. It's good that they have one of their best players locked down for another 5 years. Joey Bosa, Nick Bosa, I find them to be really in the same caliber, top 5 defensive ends in the NFL. Joey, this is a great move by the Los Angeles Chargers. They're building something there, you know. I thought they had something back in. I thought they had something back in 2018, but unfortunately, 2019, Philip Rivers' play was a disaster back in 2019. And it seems like people need to realize that Joey Bosa, he had 11.5 sacks, second most in his whole career, had a ton of tackles, and he definitely did better than what he did last year. I mean, in 2018. He had a step up from 2018, and I think he solidified himself a solid top defensive lineman in the NFL. You know what I'm saying? So he deserves a 5-year deal. He's one of the strongest players on the Los Angeles Chargers. When I think of the Los Angeles Chargers, I think of Joey Bosa at this point. He's the best player on the team, and he deserves it. He deserves that extension, and the Chargers are lucky that they have him for another 5 more years. Another 5 years. 5 more years of double-digit sacks year after year after year. You know, and it seems like he's getting better every year. I feel like this year Joey Bosa is going to have even more sacks than he ever had in his whole NFL career. I feel like this year the Chargers have a chance to go to the playoffs, and he might be more motivated, because players don't play that great when they're not on a great NFL team. Last year they went 5-11. That really must have not motivated him to play to his top caliber. You know what I'm saying? If that makes sense. Usually when players aren't when you go 5-11, once you start losing a ton of games, you're not going to be as motivated as you would be if you were like 12-4, like they were in 2018. So next year they might be going like 9-7, at least 10-6. I'm sure Joey Bosa will have one hell of a year like he did in 2017, even better, you know. So Joey Bosa, he is one of the best defensive ends in the whole NFL, and he deserves that 5-year contract. He really does, and it's gonna be another 5 more years of double-digit sacks. It's always great for the Los Angeles Chargers. So all in all, this is great for the Los Angeles Chargers, and it's great for Joey Bosa. All right. Moving on to news number 2. Jordan Reed. Jordan Reed has signed with the 49ers. Now, this is an underrated pickup from free agency. Jordan Reed is a starting caliber tight end. He is. He has great route running. He has pretty decent speed, and he has really good hands. Unfortunately, he hasn't been able to stay healthy with the Washington Redskins, and that's why they unfortunately had to let him go. And I don't blame them. But now that they have a great tight end, a great blocking tight end with George Kittle, and now they have a great receiving end with Jordan Reed. Now, don't get me wrong. George Kittle is a really, really good tight end. He's really good at catching the ball. He's really good at the route running and all that. But Jordan Reed he has really quick speed. He's okay at blocking, not amazing. Much better than George Kittle. But now you have a really, really good blocking tight end with George Kittle, and you can use Jordan Reed to do the route running, to have him catch the ball. He's quicker than George Kittle, and I feel like this is a good choice for the 49ers. They definitely have the best tight end group out of the whole NFL. They have George Kittle, obviously, top 3 in the whole NFL. Then they have Jordan Reed, who's like top 10 in the whole NFL, if he can stay healthy. And then they got Ross Dwelley, who is another really good third-string tight end, and I would say he's a solid second-string tight end, but they have him as a third-string. Yeah, I feel like the 49ers and the Eagles have the best tight end group in the whole NFL. And 49ers, I think they have a better tight end group than the Eagles, due to the fact that they have 2 like all-star tight ends. You know what I mean? They got a really good tight end for the blocking and possibly catching the ball with George Kittle. And they have a great route running tight end and good speed with Jordan Reed. And they got Rob Dwelley, who's kind of a mix between the both of those guys, you know? And they're both really good. All 3 of them are really good, quite honestly. And 49ers, man, they're even though with the ton of injuries that they have, I feel like they're going to be pretty good next year. They're going to be pretty scary, especially with their really good tight end group, you know? So, all in all, this is a really underrated pickup from free agency. Jordan Reed is obviously a really great player. If he can stay healthy, hopefully he can, and he'll have a great impact for the 49ers if he can stay healthy. All right, and moving on to our last news topic of today. Now, when I wrote this, Doug Peterson unfortunately caught the coronavirus, and that was basically what this news topic was going to be about. It was going to be about Doug Peterson catching the coronavirus and Deuce Staley being the head coach for Doug Peterson until whenever. But I fortunately wrote this a long time ago, and then I had the equipment issues, and I've just been really busy. But fortunately, Doug Peterson has recovered, which is great news. Fortunately, he did. Deuce Staley, he was a pretty good replacement for Doug Peterson. Maybe he'll have down the road. Maybe he'll have a head coaching job somewhere, which he does deserve. But which unfortunately that would mean that he would no longer be the running backs coach for the Eagles, which would suck, you know. But yeah, he did a pretty good job, and this is actually pretty concerning because hopefully no one else catches the coronavirus in the NFL. I know they have things in place. Just in case, like whatever like this happens. Hopefully Doug Peterson doesn't have any health defects from catching the coronavirus. I'm glad that he's doing great. You know, the Eagles, he's the best Eagles head coach in Eagles history. So yeah, I'm glad that he's doing better. I wrote this episode a long time ago. I wrote this in the beginning of August when Doug Peterson was first announced to to have been tested positive for COVID-19, and fortunately he recovered, and I'm just glad that he did. But that's what was originally my third news topic. It's just hopefully NFL teams and players take this coronavirus thing very seriously. They don't want to affect the other teammates. You don't want to have an outbreak like what happened in the MLB. Hopefully no other NFL head coaches or players ends up catching this coronavirus, and hopefully everyone just stays safe. And I gotta say, I was really impressed with Deuce Staley as the head coach. The players had a lot of great things to say about Deuce Staley. He gets along with the players, and he is specified as the running backs coach, but it seems like he was running things very smoothly. And I at the same time, I hope he has an NFL head coaching job down the road, but at the same time, I don't want him to have an NFL head coaching job, because that means he would have to leave the Philadelphia Eagles, and that would be the worst thing ever, because I really like him as the assistant head coach and the running backs coach. He does his job really great on both parts. He's really made Miles Sanders a great running back, a guy that started out with fumbling problems and turned him to a great running back. He somehow knows how to make, I don't want to say bad running backs great, but running backs are just okay. Like Jay Ajayi, he made him into an all-star player. He wasn't like that in Miami. He was not. And then he came to Philadelphia, and Deuce Staley coached Jay Ajayi to be amazing. So I think he has a future. I feel like somewhere down the road he's going to become an NFL head coach, or maybe he doesn't want that job. Maybe he's okay just sticking with the running backs coach, sticking with what he does best. And I don't blame NFL coaches doing that. I don't blame that they don't do that. I don't think the goal for a lot of these coaches to be an NFL head coach. Maybe it is for some of them, but I don't know. I feel like that would be a lot of pressure, and you wouldn't be as like close with some of the players, You won't have a specific job like a running backs coach. So maybe he doesn't want to do that. He had a chance. I think they did talk to him to become the offensive coordinator, Deuce Staley. I believe they talked to him. I'm not really sure. I don't know if he would be good at that. I think it would just be pretty good as an NFL head coach instead of being. I don't know if instead of being an offensive coordinator, I think he'll just be a pretty good NFL head coach, because quite honestly, these days, NFL head coaches, I don't want to say they don't do a lot, but they don't have to do the play calling. They just have to have a really good system, So he could be an NFL head coach down the road. I'm just not sure if he wants to, I think he had a good time being a head coach for a little bit when Doug Peterson had COVID, but I don't know. I think he's great as an assistant head coach, and he's pretty good as a running backs coach for Philadelphia. So I think he should just stick with that. I'm glad that Doug Peterson recovered, and this might have opened an opportunity for Deuce Staley to have a potential head coaching job somewhere in the NFL. So take that. Is that good news? It's good news for NFL teams, but not good news for the Eagles, that's for sure. But I would be happy for him to have a head coaching job somewhere in the NFL. I like Deuce, and he deserves the best. All right, we're moving on to the segment of today. Today's episode is Hall of Fame or Hall of Shame. We're going to be talking about guys like Dante Culpepper, Wes Welker, so on and so forth. All right? Okay, let's get into the Hall of Fame or the Hall of Shame. All right, our first contender of today. He was in the NFL for 10 years. Played from 99 to 2009, mainly for the first 5 years of his career, 6 years, mainly the first 6 years of his career, he was with the Minnesota Vikings. He wore number 11 mainly for his whole career. You know him, the 6'4" quarterback, Dante Culpepper. All right, give this man a round of applause. Dante Culpepper. He's not a Hall of Famer. I'm just kidding. I'm just going to flat out say he was a really great player, a revolutionary type of player. He had great speed, great arm, great elusiveness, but unfortunately he's not a Hall of Famer. He did have some great seasons with Randy Moss. You got to keep that in mind. He had Randy Moss, and it seemed like he was really interception heavy for a lot of his career. He threw a ton of yards as usual. The most yards he's ever thrown is 4,717 yards. He had a crazy arm. He did throw a lot of picks, though. His best season was in 2004, but he was never the best at his position. Revolutionary, for sure. I mean, it's crazy how he had I feel like he's a lot like Jamarcus Russell, but takes his craft and work seriously. Unlike Jamarcus Russell, he was a lazy bum, nice guy, but lazy bum who had a ton of talent and wasted it on donuts. Now, okay, it's a little mean, because I think his loved one died, and I think that's what kind of ruined his career. So it's just a little bit mean there. But Jamarcus Russell was waste for the Raiders, and he's the biggest bust in NFL history, so you all know that. Nothing much to say about him, but he has basically a lot of the traits of Jamarcus Russell did, but he actually took his work and craft seriously. He had mobility, a crazy strong arm, and he had a lot of gifted. He was a very, very gifted quarterback. I think he had some injury issues near the end of his career. He only went to 2 Pro Bowls. He wasn't anything crazy, but he was a really good quarterback for his time down in Minnesota. Now you got to keep in mind he did have Randy Moss for a bit, and he didn't go to the playoffs. He was all right in the playoffs. Now he was all right in the playoffs. He had 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions in 2000, and in 2004 he had 5 touchdowns to 2 interceptions, which isn't bad. He won 1-1, 1-1 both times in the playoffs. So he won 1 game, he lost 1 game. So he's 2-2 in the playoffs, you know. So he wasn't bad in the playoffs, but once again he didn't change the way he looked at the position. Not really, and he only played for 5 good years down in Minnesota. They did pay him. He was one of those players that they paid him 10 years and ended up not playing for all 10 years of his contract, which is the 10-year curse, they say, you know. So he was, he's not a Hall of Famer. He was a really great player for his time when he was down in Minnesota. He was a really great player. Other than that, he's in the Hall of Shame, not in the Hall of Fame. Sorry to tell you. All right, moving on to our next contender. All right, our next contender. He played in the NFL for about 13 years. He was mainly for his whole career. He was the number 1 wide receiver for Tom Brady. He was Tom Brady's receiver down in New England for most of his career. He started off with the Miami Dolphins and then got traded to the San Diego Chargers in his first year in the NFL. You all know him, the 5'9" wide receiver, Wes Welker. Give this man a round of applause. All right, Wes Welker. He was a pretty good wide receiver when he was with New England and Denver. He was an all-right receiver when he was with the St. Louis Rams. Not really that effective. He played till he was 34 years old. I feel like he has a good leadership mentality, and that rubs off when he started to when he became the 49ers wide receivers coach, because currently that's where he works. He's the wide receivers head coach for the 49ers. So he's a pretty good leader. But unfortunately, his leadership doesn't mean he's in the Hall of Fame. He was a really, really good leader. He didn't have a lot of talent on him, and somehow he made it work, and he developed his skill over time. And he's kind of like Tom Brady in the way of how he developed his skill. He was a great slot receiver. He was Julian Edelman. He's kind of like Julian Edelman in a lot of ways. He's a lot more slick and elusive than Julian Edelman. He was a pretty good receiver. He had a couple 1,000-yard seasons under his belt. Had a double-digit touchdowns back in 2013, his first year with Denver, which was when Peyton Manning threw I think that's the year when he threw 55 touchdowns. Either way, Peyton Manning was amazing down in Denver. So, I don't want to say that season doesn't really count, but he was pretty good. He was really good for a guy that wasn't that talented back in college. He was pretty good for what he was given with, but unfortunately, he is not a Hall of Famer. He is not a Hall of Famer. He was a really great receiver for Tom Brady. Just because you're a really great receiver for a Hall of Fame quarterback doesn't mean you're a Hall of Fame receiver. He went to a couple Pro Bowls, a couple All-Pro nods, but didn't change the way that you look at a wide receiver. He was just your typical really, really good slot receiver, and he was pretty good for limited talent. And he always had good hands. He was a reliable receiver. Fortunately, in the playoffs, he wasn't that great. He wasn't awful, but wasn't really that effective. So, all in all, fortunately, Wes Welker, a great leader, pretty good wide receiver, and a really good wide receivers coach down in San Francisco, but he's not a Hall of Famer. He's in the Hall of Shame. All right. Now, moving on to our players that are in the Hall of Fame. Our third guy, our next runner-up, he's a wide receiver. Playing with the St. Louis Rams for most of his career. Wide receiver to Kurt Warner. Won a Super Bowl. He played from 94 all the way up to 2009. He played and retired at the age of 37. You all know him. Isaac Bruce. Give this man a round of applause. All right. Isaac Bruce, he played for a really long time, and he had a ton of 1,000-yard seasons. Those seasons build up over time. When you have 1,000-yard seasons or a couple 100-yard seasons, he was pretty solid player for most of his career, especially in the later half. He wasn't amazing. He was just pretty good. He started off great. His first 10 years in the NFL, it was great. I wouldn't say it's top number one. I feel like he was never at the position where he was number one receiver of all the receivers in the NFL. I don't think he was at that point in the NFL. I feel like he was a little overrated for most of his career. He was put into great situations at great times. Had the ball thrown to him a lot. I'm not saying he's bad, just saying I don't think he was the best. Hall of Fame receivers should be not number one best, but they should be considered oh my gosh, I need this guy on my team. He revolutionized the way you look at a wide receiver. The way he moves, the way he catches the ball. Unfortunately, I'm going to get a lot of hate for this. I don't see him doing that. I don't ever look back at Isaac Bruce and I'm like, wow, this guy is a Hall of Fame receiver. No doubt about it. He's a Hall of Fame receiver. I never had that feeling with him. I kind of feel like it was overrated. And all his yards and all of his touchdowns built up over time. I mean, if he repeated his first 5 seasons, actually, or I would say were kind of Hall of Fame material. But after his 5 seasons, after his 5 seasons, you could even say it was just good. It was really good. It just wasn't Hall of Fame material. I feel like him and Julian Edelman are similar into the way their yards built up over time, and their playoff stats, and I feel like it's a bunch of stats built up over time. But if he played for if he was like Calvin Johnson, for example, you look at Calvin Johnson's, not just his numbers, but the way he played. His first 10 years in the NFL, unfortunately, he had to retire early due to concussion. But you could tell he was a Hall of Fame receiver. It wasn't numbers, it wasn't stats built up over time that made him a Hall of Famer. It was just the way he plays. And unfortunately, Isaac Bruce isn't oh my gosh, jumps out off of my screen the way he plays. And that's why I have to say he's in the Hall of Shame. And it's a shame because he's a really great player, and I was really struggling. He's a Hall of Famer, but my God, he just was put into great opportunities, and his stats built up over time. You know, that's why I feel like he's a Hall of Famer. That's why he was probably put into the Hall of Fame, due to his numbers being really, really good. He played till he was 37. He was a really good player when in the later part of his career. You know, he played till 37. That's incredible. You know, but it's just his numbers never like popped off. It never popped off the screen. You know what I'm saying? He had a great quarterback with Kurt Warner as well. You gotta remember that. And I just, the way he played, it was just not. It wasn't Hall of Fame material. And it's really sad to say that, because I was like, oh yeah, everyone talks about how great he is, how he's like number one. But then I thought about it, I was like, was he ever really number one? Was the way he played, was it really revolutionizing at all? Was it like, oh my God, this guy is incredible? You know, I just never had that feeling with Isaac Bruce. I looked at the way he played. I looked at some of his highlights. It was really good. I just don't think it was Hall of Fame material. And he kind of reminds me of Julian Edelman with the way that people talk about him. People think Julian Edelman's a Hall of Famer due to his amazing stats, his amazing playoff stats, and all that, and his ton of Super Bowls. But I mean, he was put into great situations, and that's how I feel about Isaac Bruce. He was put into a great situation, and I'm not trying to say his career isn't great because he was put into great situations. I mean, Jerry Rice was. I'm just saying he's just not a Hall of Famer. I just don't see it. I don't see him as a Marvin Harrison. I don't see him as a Randy Moss, Jerry Rice. I don't think he's in that category with all those guys. Sorry to say. All in all, Hall of Shame, unfortunately. I'm probably going to get a lot of blowback from that. But listen, that's just how I feel. If you just look at his highlights, look at the way he played, it wasn't like popping off of my screen. I wasn't like out of my seat like, oh my gosh, dude, this guy is a Hall of Famer, no doubt about it. I didn't have that feeling. I didn't, unfortunately. All right, moving on to our last player that we're going to be talking about today, our last Hall of Famer currently. All right, moving on to our final contender of today. He is currently in the Hall of Fame, just got inducted last year. He played from 89 to 99, played with 10 years with the Denver Broncos, 1 year with the New York Jets. Sorry, my bad. You all know him. 6'3" free safety, Steve Atwater. Give this man a round of applause. All right. Steve Atwater played with the Denver Broncos for a while. Steve Atwater played for the Denver Broncos for 10 years. He was pretty solid at his position, and he was pretty good for his tenure down with the Denver Broncos. He went to 8 Pro Bowls. He was pretty solid in the beginning of his career. He was a force to be reckoned with early on in his career. I would say like the first 3 years. Started off really strong, had Hall of Fame numbers, Hall of Fame material, Hall of Fame player. And then all of a sudden, after playing in the NFL, after 3 years in the NFL, it seems like he got a little bit worn out after his first 3 years in the NFL. Now, I'm not saying he was bad at all. No, he was amazing, one of the best at his position at the time. But he's just not Hall of Fame material later on in his career. And in the playoffs, I found him to be quite honestly, to be solid. You know, he wasn't amazing. He was pretty solid in the playoffs. He had some amazing stats, don't get me wrong, he has amazing moments. I just don't think it's Hall of Fame material moments. You know, he did become an All-Pro in this, like, early on in his career in 91 and 92. So I would say the first 4 years. Sorry, I forget about 1989, which is just an okay year, which was a pretty good year for him. But I forgot about in 1989. He played that year too. But I would say the first 4 years of his career was Hall of Fame material, and then it just kind of dwindled into really good player material. You know, like later half of his career, I would say he's like Malcolm Jenkins. Malcolm Jenkins is no Hall of Fame. Actually, I should say that for another episode. Spoiler alert, Malcolm Jenkins is no Hall of Famer, but he was really good and one of the best at his position. You know what I'm saying? So Steve Atwater, a really good player, started off Hall of Fame material, ended up being a really good player, and I just don't see him being in the Hall of Fame. I feel that he belongs into the Hall of Shame. Sorry, guys. All right, that's all that we have time for today. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Once again, I'm going to be getting my equipment fixed soon. Everything will be starting to go back to normal with my stuff. I'm going to be you're probably going to be seeing an episode right after this. I'm going to try to do rapid fire episodes, like a ton in a row. I'm going to get to episode 20 before August 28th when Madden 21 comes out. That's my goal. And that's all I gotta say. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode once again. And as always, I will see you on the next one.